Welcome to Home, where faith and family meet. My name is Father Tim Donovan, and parochial vicar at St. Bonaventure Parish in Huntington Beach. And this is my co-host, Pam Hurwitz. Welcome.
Thank you. Super excited to be. Today we are actually in my home.
That's right. We transferred from my office to Pam's home today.
And so really welcome home.
Amen.
Yeah.
And from our home to yours.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
And we have pumpkins surrounding us. And what does it smell? Maybe a pumpkin pie and
Yeah, I've
candle,
got a couple candles lit. Yeah.
I like the ambiance. We got the trash truck going outside. This is very much a home experience, Today, we're from Pam's home here because the first Sunday of every month, it'll be Pam and I sharing with you some insights. We won't have any families joining us the first week, but we want to share with you our experience of family and our experience of our ministry and kind of where we've been recently, kind of different insights we may have come through and just to allow our hearts to be shared with you this first Sunday of the month.
Yep. Awesome.
So we're looking forward to this time together with you to look into marriage today. Our readings for this week are wonderful, but they're also challenging. They can seem kind of heavy, and I think the readings recently have seemed kind of heavy in these Sundays. But the Lord has kind of come down with a hard fist on divorce, and He says, what God has joined, let no man separate in this upcoming Sunday gospel. And sometimes those words can sound harsh, but I think it's because God has such a high regard for marriage. That marriage is so important. But I think sometimes in our church, we've done a bad job at kind of heralding what the beauty of marriage is. I think sometimes we can focus on just the no, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But why? Why are we being invited into these no's? I think it's always for the sake of a larger yes, like we talked about last week. But this invitation to look into the beauty, what is God holding up here in the midst of that? And I think in marriage, the mission of marriage is to really bring God's presence into the world, to bring God's very life into the world through a marriage and through family life. And I've seen that so beautifully in the families that I've got an opportunity to work with and just seeing them around and seeing the way that they love each other and seeing the way that they work with each other and they care for each other is very much so an image of God's love. And Pam, what's some time maybe in your life where you've really seen God break through in the context of your own family life?
I would say one thing is I just did a retreat last week with 23 married couples, young married couples, and I was really talking to them about the chapter of life that I'm in with my husband right now. And so I have been married for 34 years, and I am pretty much an empty nester. And so I say that my husband and I his name's Steve, and that we're starting conversations. We're continuing conversations we started 25 years ago. Okay, we finally now have a chance to, without children, at our ankles, we have a chance to kind of reconnect. And this for me has been, and I was encouraging these couples, the most beautiful I think season of my marriage. Okay. And I loved raising my kids with my husband, but it was hectic and overwhelming. And many of you are in that right now. But just to have shared so much with one person, for 34 years, it just feels so incredibly comfortable, peaceful, joyous, to just be able to sit in that, to just be in the same room with someone, to be still connected, to be connected through so many different things that we can just look at each other and just, we can just look at each other and be with each other because of all those things. And so I was telling the couples, hang in there. Because it in a lot of ways, I was also telling them that, like, sometimes when I go to weddings, I notice during the dancing, and you'll see the youngest couples, who are just lovingly looking into each other's eyes. And then you'll see the couples that have young kids who basically are kind of telling each other lists already. Like, as soon as we leave, you're going to pick up eggs, and then I'm going to go get the kids, and then I'm going to this, I'm going to that, And I think we do really, after that chapter, we get to kind of, there's even a different way that we look in each other's eyes in this last chapter, with just kind of just a knowing. And so I just feel very blessed that God has protected my marriage. I mean, in a lot of different seasons. And I encourage those of you who just feel like, especially young couples, just that you're creating this. There's so much still, and that's what I realized with my husband. Like we still have, a huge chapter together. You kind of get lost in raising your kids and thinking this is what your relationship's going to be like forever, and you really you return to that, just the two of you, and it's peaceful and it's beautiful, and it's not perfect, but I love the season that I'm in right now.
I've noticed my first year as a priest was kind of crazy and hectic. It was probably like raising a bunch of kids, and things like that, the younger age. And I find that there's just not a lot of time to reflect.
Yes.
And I know that that's probably the life of a young family.
Exactly.
Is that there's things running 100 miles an hour everywhere. and a lot of times there's just no time to sit down there and say, okay, like, what does this all mean together? Yeah. And we can get drawn into lots of different things and pulled lots of different directions. And maybe one of the gifts too of this time with your husband is a time to reflect on the 25 years 30 or 25 years raising kids, 34 years of marriage, of the mystery that you've been living out in the midst of that, that your marriage wasn't just about you and Steve, but was about that great mystery of the sacramentality of marriage that was being lived out, that is being lived out between you two. And sometimes it's reaping the fruit of that fidelity now, like the sweetness of that, and giving you an opportunity to really reflect on that,
That's well said. I mean, I would say that's it. Like, I am enjoying the sweetness of that fruit now. And I remember someone saying this, and it really has stuck with me, is that one of the goals for relationship, for marriage, is to find someone who loves God more than they love you. Because we will disappoint each other, and we will, make bad choices, and we will get old, and we will, I can just see and if there isn't something deeper there, then why stay, But this idea that if it is a sacrament, and if you really believe that this union is making you holier and preparing you, for this next life and all those type of things, then you continue to see that other person differently. And I feel like that's something well said. And that is to try and find someone who loves God more than they love you.
I tell the couples that I'm preparing for marriage, many of them are focused on like what color napkins they're picking out and the flowers and all of these things. And I actually tell them, I said, I don't care about your wedding. And they're like, but we do. And I said, well, I care about your marriage. I said, I want your marriage to be the sweetest part. And I want that to grow sweeter over time. I don't want you guys to throw this big party and then be disappointed by the marriage that follows, But so much of that is getting them to understand that their marriage is not about just them two. Like them looking at each other, because we're going to exhaust each other.
Yes.
We're going to run each other out. We're going to get over each other very quickly. We're going to, like you said, disappoint each other. We're going to let each other down. And I think that's a very real part of human relationships. But I think there's a beautiful image that the theologians talk about marriage. It says, marriage is not about looking just into each other, but it's about walking with each other hand in hand to the Lord. And Teilhard de Chardin, this scientist / theologian 100 years ago now, he says, those creatures which you find yourself attracted to, which are husband and wife, he says, the way that you grow closer to each other is by converging upon God with one another. Okay. And the closer we get to God, the closer we get to each other as well. And I think that's that glue. That keeps us together in the context of our marriages, because we are going to not have enough energy there to keep that together by ourselves. But when the Lord is our focus together, like when we have a companion, somebody to journey with and walk with, that but the Lord is the one that draws us together and keeps us together in that way. And I think so many people are living this out, but maybe don't have the vocabulary for it. And I know that my life as a priest, a young priest, is sometimes like, well, what do you have to teach me about marriage? I really feel like my mission, though, is to share what the church has reflected on for over 2,000 years about the sacramentality, the mystery of marriage, the beauty of it, and sharing that in such a way to give people vocabulary about what they're already living out.
Yeah.
I mean, you lived this for 34 years, right?
Yes.
34 years of living out a mystery, and then, as you reflected on it, maybe getting vocabulary, speaking to others about it. But I think so many people are living it without a vocabulary, and I think so much of my life as a priest is to help them to name it, and to claim it, and to be grateful for that great gift that God's given in the midst of it.
Another thing that kind of came up with this young couples, and I think they had a bazillion kids there that day, being in the daycare. So they had, they were young parents of young families, and just the idea now too is that the focus has become so kid-centered, so kid-centered, and just parents are spending more and more time just taking their kids to things, and it means splitting up and one kid's over here and one kid's there, and there are so many different activities. And so they are kind of saying that as these parents are growing older, that a lot of them are realizing after their kids kind of leave their homes, just that they don't have things to talk about when it isn't about, they're not at a soccer game, or they're not at
what to do next.
Yeah.
The list.
And so how do we guard our marriages in the midst of our family life, and I, was talking to them a lot about that. And I think that's another huge piece that we don't talk about enough sometimes, is just because, especially with this generation of parents, we have kind of wanted to really focus a lot on producing wonderful, wonderful kids. And a piece of that, like I was telling them, I said, oh my gosh, the best thing, parents, that you could do for your kids is to love each other.
Amen.
Like that's the absolute essence, of and it teaches them about relationship, and about love, about forgiveness, all those things that are so central to the love that comes out of marriage is being taught in the midst of our marriages. And so when we tell our kids, no, tonight we're going to go, mom and dad are going to go do something, or you're saying to them that, this union is worth protecting and investing in. And so I really was encouraging them to try not to just get caught up in people just living in a home together, but to still be that, to be that couple that really grounds it, and that still has that twinkle in the eye when the other comes home, and that is exchanging a kiss and a hug at the front door. And because that sends such, it's the foundation for your home. Your marriage is the foundation for your home.
The church actually has a really beautiful image for what you're speaking about there.
Okay.
They call marriage the wellspring of the family.
Okay.
So that welling up from the union of husband and wife is the strength and love and the way that they share the grace of God with their families. And so if the wellspring isn't protected and taken care of and nourished and developed, then it can dry up. And then the love in the family starts to dry up.
Yeah.
And we see that, when we have so much focus on everything else. And if we don't really minister to each other as the ministers of the marriage, really, the priest is not the minister of the marriage.
Yeah.
Husband and wife are ministering to each other. And when they continue to minister to each other with great love and understanding and forgiveness and all of these things, and they continue to live out the vows that they made to each other, then they continue to keep that wellspring alive. And then grace flows out of that union, like you were saying, and allows our homes to be places that God's presence is really there because that union is strong, There's another image, a theological image the church gives us that I love, that has really just racked my whole life. And they say that the family is a living, breathing, walking icon of the Trinity. This is a crazy thing. I've reflected on this for years, and I'm still like, wow. Sometimes I'll just be looking at a family and be like, oh my gosh, there's a Trinity over there.
Yeah.
It's like imaging it for me. And so what an icon does, and we're not really used to icons in the Western church, but we've all seen them here or there, in the Eastern church, they have them. But what an icon does is when we see it, it directs us to something deeper. It points us to a deeper reality. And so when we see something, we see it and it says, I see something deeper there. And so really the Trinity is a relationship. The Trinity is a family. Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. And God the Father's complete self-gift to the Son who receives that and then responds with a complete self-love gift back to the Father. And the love between them is the Holy Spirit. And we're seeing that then in the family, that the Father's total self-gift to, the spouse and the spouse reception of that and reception, and then responding with the total self-gift. And the fruit of the love between them is children, but also the good of the spouses. Those are the two goods of marriage. The fruit of the marriage, the fruit of that union that comes forth. The third is the love that they have for each other, which is image in the world, and then also the children. And I don't know if we've realized that, but that's really the mission of marriage, and that no one else can do that.
Yeah.
Families are the only ones who can, witness to this God who is Trinity, God who is relationship. Me as a priest, I can't do that. In some ways, I do it with my community as a priest, but a family is the most localized image that God wants for the world. And in the husbands and wives' fidelity to each other, what they're doing is they're showing God's fidelity to his people. And we read about that in Ephesians 5 when he speaks about husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. The icon here, the sacramentality of marriage is that you're showing forth God's fidelity to his people through Christ's fidelity to the church. And so that becomes this image that is so important today with a bunch of marriages ending in divorce or separation. That's why God is that's why Jesus is so hardcore about it in the gospel this weekend. Because it says, this is important. It says something major is happening here, something so important. I think in a world that's losing faith, I think it's losing faith because it's not seeing it lived out in a healthy, beautiful way in the context of their homes and their families. And that's the place that needs to be healed, I think, and restored, and giving people the hope that it's possible. That God has a grace for you to live out this huge call to be a walking, living, breathing icon of the Trinity. How crazy is that? And it just...
And no, that's so beautiful. And I think the piece that that we struggle with as people that is so central to existing in relationship is this idea of things aren't easy. It isn't, to be in relationship isn't easy. And I can't remember, you're going to probably tell me, but the word to suffer with, is that?
Yeah, compassion.
Compassion.
To suffer with.
To suffer with, that is what it means.
In Latin, the Latin roots, compassionis, is to suffer with someone, to have compassion on them.
And so I feel like a marriage, there's a big piece of that. And I was I loved my daughter when she got married. She decided to put in her wedding ceremony the foot washing. And they actually wash each other's feet during the service. And, I just thought that, because we look at the wedding, we look at weddings as just this beautiful, just looking at each other's, but this idea that serving and down on our knees and, suffering with in the midst of family life, how important that piece is, that piece of service. And it's just not going to be easy, but nothing wonderful, doesn't come without its challenges.
What a beautiful image, though, of Christ's love for the church, and his own feet washing for the disciples, and then go and do this for others. His mandate that he gave the disciples, that they're continuing to live out today through their care for each other. Their washing of the dirtiest part of, a person's body in that time was his feet. Yeah. That God would minister to that part of us, and that he would heal that part of us too. And even Christ's own suffering for us, right? His passion and suffering and death so that we could have life. And in some ways, that's a decision we make every day as a spouse, as a priest, as somebody who lives for others, a sacrament of service for others, is that we decide, how can I die to myself today? And we don't always do that perfect. No, right. Not even close to always, not even close to probably sometimes, some days. But really that God always invites us into that again, no matter where we've been or no matter how how much we failed at that, or self-focused, or said that this is about me and not about anyone else. But that God always says, and he leaves us empty with that feeling.
Yeah.
Like when we live for ourselves, it's always this endless pursuit of emptiness.
This other thing I was thinking that you said the other day, and I want you to share it, but was just, and so many times in the marriage relationship, and we have choices, we always have choices about how we're going to respond in different situations. And you were talking about the idea of the swinging doors. And can you share that?
Sure. Yeah. My spiritual director, very wise man, gave me this image as I struggle with my own sin in my life. And he said there are two doors in our life. He says the door of charity and a door of selfishness. And he says as soon as we close the door to charity or love in our lives, we open the door automatically to selfishness. And I started reflecting on that even more. And I think that's true so much in my life. It's like when I stop giving love to others, I start in a weird way loving myself in not good ways, putting it on me and making it about me and stuff. But really the Lord gave us the love and the energy in our life for others. And I think it's a swinging door, actually. I don't think it's two separate doors.
Yeah.
I think as soon as that door closes to love, it swings open to selfishness. And that very same love that we have in our lives, that is the energy to love others, is the very same energy that we use to focus on ourselves. And so and that's what God means by, he says, the glory of God is man fully alive, is allowing the love that he's put in us to be for the other. And when we're loving the other, whether it's our spouse, our children, our people, whoever God has put in front of us to love, like that keeps us oriented in the right way. Then we don't have this kind of overwhelming amount of energy left in us that we have to somehow expend in selfishness or in things that are focused on us. And so that door, I think, is so important, like asking ourselves, like, and then so we can push that door back the other way. All we have to do is open that door again to charity, and that selfishness will subside in us.
And it's so crazy how easy it is to do it and how hard it is to do it. And I know my husband and I, the other night we had a kind of a disagreement. Okay. And, and we said some things we wish we probably wouldn't have said. And, the next day I was thinking about it, and I was just mad still, and just, my position, my this, my that, and I sat with it for a little bit, and I just found myself wanting to, I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And so I just picked up the phone in the middle of the workday and called my husband, and I just said, I know, that didn't go so well, but just, and I know we're not completely, we haven't solved this exactly yet, but I love you. I love you. And I will always love you. And just, I got off the phone. I was just like, it's so dang easy, but it's so dang hard.
We have that choice every day. And there are days we just don't want to choose love, and it's harder to reach out, in those ways. Some days we want to know, I'm going to hold on to, I'm going to cling to this. I'm going to somehow get power from this or something. But what was the freedom like after that?
Oh, the peace. I just was just like, the peace and just to be able to, the way we came home together again, just everything, and I just that door. Like, I could have, it's so easy just to, to make different choices and to live in our own selfishness. And, but there's no peace in that. And so,
I think the grace of that I'm hearing, and as you share that, is the grace of remembering, like, the mission. Like, we had to come back to the most fundamental piece. Like, I love you.
Yeah.
And I made a commitment to love you, and love is going to be greater than these things that could separate us, or things that could get between us. And that because we love each other, we're going to find a solution to this.
Yeah.
Because we love each other, we're not going to give up on each other, Yeah. And that's that fundamental piece to return to. And I think if love is in the midst of it, there's going to always be a way to heal that. And I find it good in my own life to return to the promises I made in my own ordination. When I'm struggling, I'm like, what am I doing? What is this all about? Why do I care about this? Like, this isn't doing anything good for me. this is not comfortable or easy or whatever, I return to those questions that were asked of me and what I promised to do. And it's hard to live those out perfectly all the time. And they're pretty darn, love Christ as he loves the church. Like, okay, Lord, like I don't always got it, and the same thing in our marriage, sickness and health, rich report. Whoa. Like those are some major promises. But I think when we can return to that, we're also reminded that we did that in the context of the sacred, like God sealed it. Like God is going to give us the grace to do it. In those moments, that was a grace moment.
Yeah.
To come back to that.
And I kind of also like the image of, this idea of Paschal mystery, this idea that Christ, the living, the surrendering, the suffering and dying and rising, and just that we, walk in the footsteps of Jesus. And so that we also go through those same, steps in our relationships, and I know I have experienced wonderful summer times in my marriage. I mean, times where and in those times I've learned how to be grateful and be like, oh, the blessing of a man, just a good man to live my life with, and the enjoyment and the laughter. But then we've also experienced, autumns and just things where, surrendering, and we have had to let go of, I was one of my biggest, marriage moments, I guess for me was, is my husband and I kind of having to let go of, just maybe how we thought things were exactly going to be, and it's a longer story, but anyway, but when I think of that image of a fall in Boston, fall in back east. Okay. And when, in the summer, there's the leaves are everywhere. And if you looked up, you couldn't see the stars. But in the fall, when you have let go of things, and when the leaves fall and you look at the sky, you can see the stars again. And sometimes in going through, these autumn times in our marriages and having to let go of things, other things become more clear and more important. And then I also know, there's winter time in our marriage. I mean, there's times where things kind of go dormant, and I want to encourage, our listeners that we believe in this God of springtime, and that even through everything, he's always growing us. And I mean, through so many things my husband and I have been through, he has grown us, in through every good thing, bad thing. Now that I have a chance to look back on it more, I see this God of resurrection who has used everything. I mean, and some of the toughest stuff really made us, storms make trees take deeper roots, and so some of the toughest stuff became the foundation of such deeper love. So we go through these stages, and I know we have listeners that are in winter, and we have listeners that are in summer times. And I always say, if you're in summertime, a cool wind to be blowing in. Okay.
Prepare.
And if you're winter, it never lasts forever. It never, and always to know that there's something underneath that, eventually is going to come from that. So that has helped me a lot, kind of name sometimes the season of, that I'm in with my husband, and always wondering what that crazy God is doing in the midst of that.
But you have to wait, and that's the most isn't that the most aggravating part of the entire seasonal thing? Like, I know spring's coming, but it seems like it's not, and it feels like it's not.
Yes.
And knowing it in our minds, but struggling really to embrace that in our hearts and being like, okay, it will pass. God's promise is that nothing will endure forever here, you know, and that God is with us in the midst of it, and even those, I mean, this morning's reading at the daily mass was from Ecclesiastes. This idea, there's a time for everything, and I think that's so beautiful. That's all encapsulated even in the marriage promises, sickness and health and everything in between that. Yeah, rich or poor, everything in between. Yes, that. In the good times and bad, everything in between that. Yeah, that God is with us in all times, and we're with each other. Yeah, yes, through all times too. And I think that's such a important thing. We of course we want it just to be the richer, the healthier, and the good times, but all of it is is even God's promise to us is the way you've lived out your promise with Steve too. Like, I'm with you
Yeah.
in all times,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
going to wait this out
Yeah.
together. And I don't abandon you in the winter,
Yeah.
and I'm going to meet you in the spring.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in it with you in the midst of that. Yeah.
And that's the only way you really can enjoy a truce, is to enjoy that together. I mean, that you get, after you've weathered some of those things that, I remember when my daughter lived in Boston, she would say, that, they had this terrible winter, and then they have this beautiful park in the middle of Boston Commons, and that it would just go dormant. No one would be in the park. No one, it would just be completely, snowed in. Nobody's in the middle of the city. And she goes, and then the first Saturday that it was sunny, she goes, it was called like Resurrection Saturday, and everybody just came out, and I just feel like just to be able to walk out hand in hand with somebody out of a really hard winter is, I mean, that's the promise that we get. We get that promise that God wants to lead us there.
God's promise is that he's always with us in the midst of all of those things. And I think when we live according to the mission of God, like that, the promise will be fulfilled. I think it's sometimes when we go off on our own missions, our own ideas of things, and then sometimes maybe the winter maybe will last longer than it needs to be because we're, a self-provoked winter. But the mission of God, I think, is so clear for us, is to share his love with others and to continue his life in the world, and to continue to prove to others that he hasn't given up on us. We're not just some sort of like floating out there and, good luck for eternity type thing, but that God is with us and he wants to be with us for eternity. I know, Pam, one of the things you do as well is you have this Faith and Family Collective, and I want to encourage everyone to go check that out. You can look it up on Google. It'll come right up. They have an Instagram page and a website as well, right?
Yeah. So Faith and Family Collective, and it's kind of all about giving families resources and tools to gather together, to have intentional time together in our homes, which is becoming harder and harder. And I think sometimes I'm just telling families even to just find moments to all be in the same room together. I mean, which is just crazy, but those sometimes have to be scheduled or they don't happen. And so we're trying to encourage families to do that. And then many times I think we need the language or the prompts or a guide in maybe to having intentional conversations, some of the things that we as parents need to pass on and teach to our kids. So we have this gathering box, and that's the product we've been doing, and it comes out seasonally, and our autumn box just is out. And the focus for the autumn box is all about mission. And it has everything in the box to actually write a family mission statement. And it is kind of crazy that I think every organization I belong to has a mission statement. I think the detergent I use has a mission statement. I mean, it's on every box, and yet when people ask me, what's the mission of your home or your marriage or your family, I find myself stumbling over, sometimes. And I can remember that there was a time that when my kids were both in high school, and I said to them, I go, okay, here's the deal. We're at dinner, and I said, I want each of us to write down the 4 things that our family values, that Hurwitz's value. And so my husband wrote down 4, my son, my daughter, and myself. And I said, don't look at each other's, just write them down. And so I looked, we shared them, and one of the things we all had was faith. And one of the things we all had was humor, because my husband and my son are really funny. And the other 2 were kind of all over the place. And I remember just saying to my husband, dang it, we could have rigged this. I mean, if we were having these conversations earlier on, we could have known exactly what, So this idea of somehow, especially the younger, the better, because you got your hand on the root, man. You have got your hand on the root. So the younger that even that you as co-parents, as partners, can begin having conversations together about, what is it that you want your family to look like? What do you want it to feel like when you come in your home? What are your values? How do you want to spend your time? And so there's 15 different cards that have a cool quote on each side, and then it has prompts on the back for you to fill out. And some, depending on the age of your kids, it's very appropriate for like school age kids and families. And then it's a wonderful tool for couples, for even, engaged couples, because it's all about just kind of creating mission in your relationships. And so and it also comes with a little stuffed red heart, and the person that has the velvet red heart has the floor. So it kind of gives you a talking tool also, that helpful in families. And I have to say, I feel like this has been almost like a lifelong project. I've talked so much about these things, and now I actually have it in a box for families to kind of immerse themselves in, and all they need to do is just add time. That's it. And then at the end, all these cards kind of drill down to an exact, to a mission statement, to your mission statement. And it has even something like the final thing, it has that you pick a family scripture. And so we give you a choice of 10, okay? Or you can look at your own, but like, I know that one of them is be still and know that he is God. And just every night, if that becomes something that every night you put your hand on your kid's forehead, you grab your husband's hand and you say, be still and know that he is God, and that just bringing that in every single day into your home and repeating it, just how that becomes a breath, almost like a breath in your house. So there's just a lot of those type of tools, and I would love to share it with people. And you can go on our website and check it out. And I feel like it's for today's family. It's practical. It's everyday. You don't have to be a catechist to do it. You can do this. You just have to commit to a little bit of time.
I think it's so important to have that mission, because what a mission does is it focuses us. Because sometimes we can feel so disoriented, I think, in the midst of our world and the crazy of the family life. But when we can have a collective mission, a mission that we return to, something that we've talked about, it can bring back that focus. Okay, this is what's important.
Yeah.
All these other things are maybe still happening in our lives, but this is why we're doing it. And it helps me too. I have to remind myself, like, what is my mission as a priest? And are the things that I'm doing part of that mission? Or could someone else be doing that maybe, or something else, maybe I don't have to be doing that, or all of these different things. And that mission helps us to be directed, but it also helps to remind us regularly. It's something we have to return to almost every day.
For sure.
And I think probably the most successful companies in the world, probably, but families as well, is the ones who remember their mission and kind of return to it and then direct our lives that way. Beautiful. I encourage those to check it out. Faith and Family Collective is a .com or
faithandfamily.com.
Awesome. And there's also the previous gathering box you can check out as well. It's about celebrating lots of things, which is important as well, because we forget that maybe even a Monday can be a celebrated. I saw that. I was like, I usually don't celebrate Mondays, but I guess I could probably try. But this being drawn back into the beauty that is our family life and the mission that is living this out every single day, that our home is not just a place to drop the school bags before the next day, but it's really a place that nourishes and supports our lives together and allows us to be more alive and happy, healthy, and holy, I call it, in the midst of the world. So thank you for joining us this week on Home, and we look forward to continuing our conversation next week. We invite back another family to continue this conversation through October.
I always enjoy your company, Father Tim.
Me too, Pam. Thank you so much.
I feel home with you.